After a long winter, most of us look forward to the summer, family vacations, and hopefully a slowing down from the hustle and bustle of winter's demands. But as winter ends and spring creeps in, those relaxing days can turn into a nightmare with one tick bite. That bite could result in flu-like symptoms, and over time, if misdiagnosed and undetected, the strength of these infections can begin to manifest into physical symptoms such as red expanding skin rash, extreme fatigue, depression, joint stiffness, heart palpitations, even severe memory loss. Today, we are talking about Lyme disease. It's a controversial disease, and according to the CDC, approximately 300,000 people a year are diagnosed with Lyme. That's 1.5 times the number of women diagnosed with breast cancer and 6 times the number of people diagnosed with HIV/AIDS. This year, they are projecting a higher than usual tick population, and that's resulting from our warm winter and a rainy spring. Welcome to Community Conversation. I'm George Lucaci.
And I'm Lisa Allen. Understanding Lyme means understanding what it is and what symptoms to look for. Today, we're interviewing 3 guests. Dr. Rosen, an acupuncturist who treats patients with Lyme, an actress who at the pinnacle of her career almost lost it all, and a mother whose daughter is so chronically ill from Lyme that she started a business to help others fight back against their Lyme disease. But first, let's meet Dr. Ross Rosen, president, founder, and clinic director at the Center for Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine. Dr. Rosen is an experienced practitioner of classic Chinese medicine and a senior certified instructor of Shen Hammer Pulse Diagnosis. He teaches a sophisticated diagnosis technique worldwide and draws patients from near and far for a variety of ailments that include heart disease, GI, OBGYN disorders, as well as a spectrum of autoimmune disorders, including Lyme disease. He has a book soon to be released on the Chinese medical understanding and treatment of heart shock and trauma. Welcome, Dr. Rosen. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So great to have you on. So this is a topic close to our heart because George and I have both suffered from Lyme disease, and you know that. I've been getting treated by you for acupuncture. And for about 17 years, you've been in business treating patients. And from your vantage point, I know it's really complicated, but for our viewers, can you just talk about what is Lyme and why is it so difficult to treat?
Sure. Well, from the Chinese medical perspective, we consider Lyme disease to be under the rubric of what we call Gu syndrome, which is a parasitic disease process. So as we get exposed to this parasitic infestation, it tends to embed itself within the constitution, and it has a tremendous amount of protective measures to remain hidden in the body, right? We give the analogy of if you imagine your body and your health as this cup of flour and the limes as this teaspoon of oil that you drip all through the flour and then stir it all up and then try and figure out how to now extract that oil back out of the flour. So it becomes a very, very difficult process to do. And so within Chinese medicine, we have a number of different treatment strategies to accomplish that.
And how does acupuncture go at the problem? How do you start to solve Lyme disease with acupuncture?
Yeah, well, the first thing is a proper diagnosis, right? So Lyme disease can present itself in manifold ways, and it depends on the particular individual. So we diagnose the individual based off of, there's a whole bunch of pillars of diagnostics in Chinese medicine. One of the main ones, and my specialty, is in Chinese pulse diagnosis, which you referenced earlier. So within the area of the radial artery on the wrist, we are trained to discover, well, there's about 90 different discrete sensations, and there's 28 different pulse positions and 9 different depths of pressure, each related to anatomical areas of the body, organ systems, emotional states, and so forth. And so from that, we are able to extract out and analyze what's happening individually in any given individual in every single area of the body. From there, we create diagnoses, treatment strategies, and protocols for treatments, right? So it's like a multi-layered process to do that, right?
So you do Chinese medicine also. I don't know if you did treatment with Chinese medicine?
I did the traditional, and it was about 20 years ago for me, but I guess one of the things I learned from that, and you just addressed it, that it's called the great imitator. And it's very difficult to diagnose, and you just went through some of that. But what's amazing to me is that this can attack any organ in your body.
Yes. Yeah, and there's particular pulse signatures that over the years I've discovered with Lyme disease. The initial area that it tends to influence is the liver in Chinese medicine. So the liver position is more than just the liver organ, right, from a Chinese medical energetic perspective. It governs a lot of peripheral nervous system functions. It governs muscles. It governs the ability to clear toxins from the body and invigorate blood circulation to particular tissues. So what we start to see on the pulse is that in the position delineated for the liver itself, we start to see this very flooding waveform, which is a sign of an infectious process. If we can treat it initially from that vantage point, we can typically prevent signs and symptoms from occurring. Typically, though, most often when people come to see me, they're in a chronic state already, right? So at that point, because the bacteria and the parasitic infestation has kind of embedded itself and moved through the system, it's now showing itself and implicating multiple organ systems. So it gets much trickier at that point. And so in order to accomplish a successful treatment, one really needs to focus more so on promoting latency and dormancy of the problem. If their body was strong enough, if their immune system was capable enough, they would have thrust the pathogen out at the exterior, right? Over time, it weakens the system. And so to try and force out the inflammation and the infectious process at that point can actually be very damaging, which is why sometimes Western medical approaches can have many side effects, right?
Something that I wondered about, and maybe it's something that you don't chronicle, is there a certain age group that you see coming in more than others? Is that something?
Well, I
because
see,
a lot
yeah.
of children might not be able to tell their parents that they have a tick bite or something that's red, and that's why maybe it comes, it manifests itself much later and it sits latent for a long time.
Right. I've seen Lyme's in all populations. I do think it happens more so in the younger population, partially because they're outdoors more, they're more active, and they're in areas and environments where they can become exposed to that process. One of the things I also want to mention is, you've alluded to the fact that this is going to be a bigger population this year because of weather impacts, right? Which is absolutely true, but I think there's another issue that we all need to be aware of, and that's to some degree a social responsibility, right? We have been decimating the population for deer and mice, right? We're building more golf courses and more communities, and we're growing, but we haven't realized that we're displacing the very animals that are carrying these disease processes into our environments. And so that's something we need to also consider and figure out ways of addressing.
I have a question because you mentioned the Powassan virus. Now, this has been around for a long time, but this year it seems to be the one virus that's being talked about that is a tick-borne illness. Is there a big difference between a neurological versus a bacterial? Should we be concerned about the Powassan, and how do we protect ourselves? What should we know about that?
Right. Well, the different manifestations of symptoms really comes from the uniqueness of the individual more so than the actual infection itself. So when the neurological system is actually strong, that tends to be where those symptoms are going to be actually heightened. Because the body's able to bring more reserves and more energy and more of the immune system to the surface to fight it. And so you start to see bigger types of neurological symptoms, even with all the different manifestations of that. When the nervous system is weak, that infection tends to go more interior quickly. And so you start to see implications to the organ systems a little more.
So this is a disease that hides. So can you talk to us a little bit about the co-infections and how that is manifested versus the real diagnosis?
Well,
or they're coming together with the Lyme disease.
They're all emerging together, and the hiding nature of that is the difficult part of treatment. And so within Chinese medicine, we have 5 different strategies from an herbal perspective to treat that. One is using anti-parasitic herbs. We have herbs that go in there and actually can kill off parasites themselves. And we also need herbs that clear toxins, heat toxins, and the inflammatory processes that develop from the infections itself. But we also need to worry about how they protect themselves. So we have herbs that we say crack blood. And what that basically means is it's actually breaking down barriers such as biofilms that actually kind of insulate these pathogens from proper treatments, right? And then, of course, we know the impact on the nervous system, so we need to make sure we're calming the shen or calming the spirit, dealing with mood disorders and all the things that take place from the nervous system implications of that. And then the 5th strategy is actually boosting the immunity, because we need to strengthen the immune system to assist with the proper eradication and movement of this pathogen out to the exterior again, or in the very least, build up enough reserves where we can keep this pathogen latent long enough where the person doesn't have to experience symptoms anymore.
You know, we're actually going to be winding down shortly, but I wanted to ask you a question because I went to a soccer field this weekend and all I saw was a landmine. I mean, I thought, oh my gosh, there's deer running, you know, you see stuff in the grass. And so I want to know, how do I protect not just myself, but my children? Because they're not infected yet. So how do I protect them? They're not going to do acupuncture, but there's options. What are those options?
Well, the first thing to do is keep your immune system strong, right? So we need to take care of ourselves, get proper sleep, eat really good foods, not denatured foods, GMOs, and all the different types of pesticides and things like that. Getting proper sleep and so forth. But I think also we want to make sure we're using things that can repel these things safely, but at the same time strengthen our own bodies. So taking things, you know, I create essential oil sprays that are resistant, that create resistance to ticks and so forth. And if someone does find a tick on them, you know, using proper measures to properly eliminate and eradicate that from the body.
Great. How do people find you?
Well, they can find me. We are in 166 Mountain Avenue in Westfield, Center for Acupuncture and Herbal Medicine. Our website is centerforacupuncture.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Doctor.
you both for having me. I appreciate it.
There's a threat targeting America: Lyme disease. Spread by tiny ticks, this dangerous disease can cause life-changing health problems and is now more widespread than West Nile, tuberculosis, and HIV/AIDS combined. So it's time for us to target Lyme disease. That means checking for ticks when you've been outside and seeing a doctor if you experience the warning signs, which can include joint pain and flu-like symptoms. Learn how you can target Lyme disease at targetlyme.org.
Our next guest is Valerie Rose Yowen. She's an actor, musical theater performer, writer, and Lyme disease advocate. She's also from Brooklyn, New York. She has merged her personal experience with Lyme with her career in the arts, writing the screenplay for the feature film I Have Lyme. She has dedicated herself to raising awareness for this misunderstood illness through her production company and artist collective, Artists Bite Back. And she's committed to breaking the whole stigma. Valerie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So tell me exactly how this dramatic change in your life began. What was it that put you on this journey to be cured from Lyme disease?
Right. So like so many Lyme patients, my story has many chapters and many aspects of the story. So a concise answer to that would be, my entire life, I was living a very active life. I was in the performing arts from a very young age, and I was so active and, you know, living in New York City and with my friends and doing all of these things, but I had this other parallel reality that was going on, that I knew in my heart something was really wrong. I had chronic fatigue, I had spinal pain, I had, you know, rapid heartbeat, I could never sleep at night, even for when I was a baby. I mean, something just never felt right, but I didn't know what that was. So, you know, that was going on my entire life, but also, like many Lyme patients, I had breaking points that you referred to. So I just kept going, I just kept trucking through. I got my BFA in musical theater for my undergraduate degree. I was working nonstop, but always, like I said, knowing something was wrong. My first major breaking point with Lyme, and still not knowing that it was in fact Lyme that was afflicting me, I was on tour. It was my first major professional job right out of school, and working with the summer stock company and doing 8 shows a week of Hair the Musical and traveling all over. And I woke up and I was paralyzed. And I went into this job and this production ill. But like I said, I just kept doing what I was doing and what I was doing my whole life, because every time I went to a doctor, nobody knew what was going on and nobody had an answer for me. So once that moment happened, I obviously came home to New York City, started seeing doctors. This was in the year 2010, 2011, and that was a whole nother chapter in itself. So, but you hear that a lot with Lyme patients, and you know, even the people who know they have Lyme or they don't know that that's what's going on in their body, that symptoms will come and go in terms of their manifestations. So that's another thing that's really difficult, I think, for the Lyme community and patients of chronic illness and misunderstood illness, how to communicate with your community and your family and friends what's going on with you when you don't even know what's going on yourself.
Do you know how long you had it?
I don't know, and this is something that I have tried to find peace with. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and actually a lot of my difficulties getting diagnosed, I was going to doctors in New York City and they said, you can't have Lyme because you're from New York City, which we know is so incorrect. in so many ways. But looking back, I'm 29 years old now, and looking back, I remember, pre-K, kindergarten, so we're talking 4 or 5 years old, having these headaches, having the spinal pain, not being able to lift my head off the desk, but also still being a really good student. And like I said, still doing all these things. And my parents worked for the airlines, so I was traveling all over the world. So it wasn't like I was bedridden. I just never felt well. So I don't have a moment where, when, or how I got Lyme disease. And like I said, that's something that's very unsettling for a lot of people. But I know that it's been going on for a while, and based upon the severity of my neurological manifestations when I started seeing Lyme literate doctors, 10 years at least. Right. So
that's
the
an
longer,
interesting phrase, Lyme literate doctors, because the misdiagnosis is very disturbing that you would get from the traditional part of medicine, from your internists or doctors who aren't familiar with this, or the numerous manifestations and subtleties of the disease.
Yeah, it's a really big problem. So besides me going to top New York City doctors after that incident when I was on tour, and them saying to me, you can't have Lyme because of where you're from, which we know, like I said before, is just so not right. I went to top infectious disease doctors, top rheumatologists, and I wasn't, knowing me, I'm pretty vocal and pretty communicative, and so I was very clear with doctors. I mean, I came with my list of symptoms, I didn't hide anything. I said, I'm tired all the time, I have joint pain, it's not because I'm dancing full time, it's beyond that, there's something really wrong. And even with being very specific and very clear about what was going on with me, these doctors dismissed me, and not only dismissed me, but many of them said, you don't have Lyme disease. And it leaves the patient in a situation where they have to advocate and research for themselves, which is very difficult.
So how did you find that doctor that found the Lyme, and how did it change your life?
Well, it's also a long story. What I would say, just circling around to the end of it before I talk about it, to other Lyme patients, so they know just to keep going, and to, even if you see people who aren't necessarily listening to aspects of your case or aren't hearing you, don't let that discourage you from fighting for your life, because every life is worth it. And it's important to keep going, even when the medical institution, which is put in such a place where it's the pillar, it's what we look up to, they're supposed to have the answers. We're all humans, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way and it's not immediate. So for me, once conventional medicine as a system failed me, I started seeking out Lyme literate medical doctors. The acronym is LLMD, which is pretty well known within the Lyme community. And that is a problem in itself too. We shouldn't be separated from the masses, but doctors have been forced to separate themselves from conventional medical institutions in order to focus on their Lyme patients. So once it became clear through a series of events of my own research combined with other alternative practitioners saying, we really think this is what's going on with you, or you're kind of a clear-cut Lyme case, I don't know why they're dismissing this, this is clearly what it is. I found these specialists, and I saw multiple, 4 to 5, 6 of them, tried many Lyme-specific treatments and got worse and worse and worse. And actually our previous guest was talking about, even if it's alternative medicine, if you're so sick and your body is so toxic from being untreated for so long, you may not be strong enough to handle the treatments you need. So Lyme patients and autoimmune patients across the board are put in a really difficult spot. The sequencing of treatments is almost as important as the diagnosis itself. So I went through a really difficult phase with that, but at least I had the answer. So I thought, you have your label and you think, okay, at least I know, I'm not insane. At least I know I'm not imagining this. And then, after a while, I found a Lyme-specific doctor that was a match for me. And everybody, a previous guest was saying this as well, everybody's different. The disease manifests itself in different ways in all different types of people. The disease does not discriminate. It's very important to know, too. So you will find your match. It may not be right away, but just keep going. And I just kept doing that. And I feel very lucky to have found someone who values my story and listens. When you work as a team, it's very important too.
You know what I find so impressive is that now you have a movie that you're putting together.
Yeah.
And do you have the energy for that? Is it driven by passion? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So once I found myself out of the real darkness that this experience is for so many, I said, as many of us do, as many Lyme advocates and chronic illness advocates do, I have to give back. I have to, you know, staying silent about my story may feel safer and more comfortable, but it's my obligation and my duty to make sure that I talk about the things that weren't easy and were scary in order to help other people so they know what's going on with themselves, and also so they feel safe to speak out about their own stories. So I would say passion, of course, and my commitment to advocacy and community action, but I am really doing a lot better, and I do have these practitioners who they worked around the clock to save me. So I'm very lucky for that. So I think it's a little bit of both, but the drive is there. I've been working on this project for almost 2 years. I challenged myself as an artist to put this experience into the format of a feature film and tell the story of chronic illness in a way that hasn't been done before. I'm really excited about it.
And it's I Have Lyme?
Yes, I Have Lyme the movie. I Have Lyme, yep.
And how do people learn about it?
So you can go to our website, www.ihavelymethemovie.com. I need the .com part. And Indiegogo, www.indiegogo.com. And while you're on that website, you could search I Have Lyme the movie. And we have a ton of information on the Indiegogo website about the plot of the film, our social justice mission, what we are saying and doing for the Lyme community. And we're just so excited to have everybody on board with us because I wrote the film for us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Our final guest is Kim Bradle, local Summit resident and co-owner of the business Revivify. Kim is a second-generation Summit resident who married her high school sweetheart and became a stay-at-home mom who raised 3 beautiful children. Kim's story is not about her own suffering, though, from Lyme, but it's about her role in supporting her daughter who became chronically ill. While being sick can be devastating financially, emotionally, and socially, so can the pain of watching your loved one suffer, especially when it's your own child. Welcome, Kim.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So, George and I wanted to have you on.
Yeah, well, Kim's a neighbor, which is nice to know. We've seen her walk the dogs and vice versa. Kim, I have to know, as a mother, as a parent, how do you advocate for a child when there's so much misdiagnosis occurring and so much obfuscation about this disease?
It's difficult, and especially one of the symptoms is brain fog. So I become her second set of ears, and I drive her places. She's not able to really advocate for herself, so you have to become involved. The whole family becomes involved.
Right. When did she become sick? How long has she been sick?
She's been sick about 3.5 years. She was finishing graduate school. She has always wanted to be a teacher. And her first symptoms were severe neck pain, fatigue, and really vision problems. So she struggled to finish. At the time, my youngest was a senior in high school, so I was kind of looking forward to that next step. Busy with him, looking at colleges, and she struggled. So, process of elimination. Went to a lot of doctors, neurologists, rheumatologists, you name it, to rule out a lot. Until she actually saw a post from one of her classmates about her struggle with Lyme, which led us to an infectious disease doctor locally. And so that's where she was ultimately diagnosed. So she was diagnosed fairly quickly.
How is it possible that so many doctors of so many different specialties forget and don't even try to look at Lyme as a possibility? It seems like they almost initially exclude Lyme, or at least they are not aware of it.
Right. The standard testing for Lyme, unfortunately, is not accurate.
Right. You get negatives.
You get negatives. You get false negatives.
Even if you're sick for a prolonged period of time.
And she did not have a rash. Did not have any of those symptoms. So I don't know how long she had Lyme.
Or where she got it.
No, or where she got it. But it's a struggle. It's an emotional struggle for everybody. It involves the whole family.
Well, and I just want to say, because as a caretaker, I think sometimes we talk about the sufferers, we talk about their journey, but from a caretaker perspective, how is your journey? I mean, do you feel isolated What are the emotions you go through in this process?
It's tough. You know, I feel sad. I feel frustrated. But, you know, we have a good core group of family and friends that try to understand. I don't think anybody really understands the full extent of the illness. You know, we just try to make everybody aware.
That's
really
key,
what's
making
going
everybody
on.
aware. That's what we're trying to do
Right.
here right now.
Right.
But, you know, in making people aware, do you come across other people, numerous other people with Lyme? Is that people that you talk to, that you meet with?
Yes.
Because this sounds like in a severe case. I'm not sure even that you can classify it as light or heavy, but it
Right.
sounds like this is something that's significantly changed your life.
You meet other people going through it in treatment
Right.
facilities.
Right.
And that becomes your support group, really. Because, you know, everybody wants to know where you've been, what you've done, what treatments you've done. And that becomes your support. But it consumes your life. You know, there's no question about that. But when it's your child, you have to do everything you can for your child. It's very upsetting. It really is. And, you know, she's 27 now. She got married last spring. This should be the most exciting time of her life, but it's still a struggle for her. So we'll get there, though.
And I'm so impressed because you opened up a business, Revivify, and I want to talk about that because some people go through life and they don't know where to turn, but you ended up doing something about, you helped
did.
create a solution.
Well,
So
because
talk
we did
about
so
that.
much research on how to relieve her symptoms, we came across an article on cryotherapy, which is exposing the body to extremely cold, dry liquid nitrogen for up to 3 minutes. And it causes the body to go into a response for inflammation and removing toxins. And so we went and tried it a couple different places, loved it. She felt great, I felt great, and I thought, you know what, we can bring this to Summit. So I approached my personal trainers that have a little gym called Evolution Fitness in Melbourne, and told them about my idea. We partnered up and we opened Revivify in January, and it's been amazing. It's getting busier and busier. And we help a lot of people with the autoimmune illnesses, along with athletes and very active people that are looking for recovery. We're at 316 Springfield Avenue.
Right here in Summit.
Yes, and we're actually opening our second location next week
Okay.
in Berkeley Heights, in Vince Gabriel's Fitness Center at 63 Industrial Avenue.
So the fitness issue is something that is part of the holistic approach, I think. And I know from my experience, doctors told me, well, keep your temperature elevated. And I said, what does that mean? It was exercise, exercise more. And that, to me, helped. But my case was much different than so many other cases.
Yes.
But it sounds like the business that you've developed is a real jewel of Summit right now.
It's very new, but it is becoming popular, and all the doctors now are referring their patients to us, which is great. Her integrative medicine doctor, her infectious disease doctor, her acupuncturist, they're all sending people to us, which is really, really great. And we're hoping to help as many people as we can.
That's wonderful. One last message for anybody out there, for the caretakers. What would you tell them?
Remain positive, you know, rely on your family for support and just be positive because it will get better. It really will.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having me.
Thank you for sharing your story.
It's something that I think is so important to bring to people's mind. You know, when you talk about the number of people that have Lyme's, and that's just diagnosed with Lyme's. Forget about the people who are misdiagnosed
Yes.
or where it's repressed or doctors say you have something else. To me, it has to really become heightened in people's consciousness, I think. I think that's
And
important.
then to find the right treatment. Not everybody has the means to find the right treatment, and a lot of it's not covered by insurance.
Right.
Thanks to our guests for sharing their expertise and experiences, and thank you, our viewers, for watching Community Conversations. We know we're just scratching the surface on this very important topic, but we want you to be aware of the signs and symptoms of Lyme. And please, reach out to your doctor if you have any concerns.
Yes. And for more programming like this at Hometown Television, please visit us at www.hometowntv.org. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Hometown Television, and don't forget to like us and subscribe on Facebook and Instagram at Hometown TV. Thank you.